True story, my children dismissed me. My reckoning made them wish they never. Have you ever felt a gnawing emptiness? A quiet whisper in your soul telling you that something fundamental is missing, even when outwardly everything seems abundant. Have you ever felt a gnawing emptiness? A quiet whisper in your soul telling you that something fundamental is missing, even when outwardly everything seems abundant. Have you ever felt a gnawing emptiness? A quiet whisper in your soul telling you that something fundamental is missing, even when outwardly everything seems abundant. Have you ever felt your own child look you in the eye and lie to you? Have you ever had the person you poured your entire heart and soul, every ounce of your being, and yes, every penny you had, into look at you not as a mother, not as a grandmother, but as a wallet? Just a means to an end? I have. Oh, I have. And that feeling, that deep, gut-wrenching betrayal, taught me the biggest, most painful, and ultimately, the most liberating lesson of my life. It's a lesson about love, about self-worth, and about knowing when enough is finally enough. I never thought I'd be here, sharing this with you all. But sometimes life just pushes you to a point where you have no choice but to speak your truth. And my truth? It's a story of a mother who was dismissed, a grandmother who was forgotten, until I finally had my reckoning. And believe me, when that reckoning came, my children, my own flesh and blood, they wish they had never. Oh, they wish they had never. It was a crisp autumn afternoon, just a few months ago, and I remember every detail with chilling clarity. The air had that particular scent of fallen leaves and wood smoke, you know the one? The kind that makes you think of cozy evenings and warm blankets, a comforting aroma that usually brings me a quiet sense of peace. I was pottering about in my little garden, the one I had meticulously cultivated over decades, tending to my heirloom roses, their velvety petals still holding on to the last vestiges of summer's blush. My hands, gnarled with age but still capable, moved instinctively among the thorns and delicate blooms. That's when my son Kalen called. Now Kalen, he's always had a way of sounding terribly important, his voice carrying an air of self-importance even when he's just telling you the sky is blue. He often adopted this tone when he was trying to impress someone, or more often, when he was subtly leading up to a request. And my daughter-in-law Zara, well, she's always been the one orchestrating their grand pronouncements, the true strategist behind Kalen's carefully rehearsed pleas. This call, though, it felt different. There was an edge to Kalen's voice, a sort of forced cheerfulness that always meant they wanted something substantial, something requiring a particularly delicate touch. He started, his voice a little too bright, a little too enthusiastic. "Mother, you won't believe the news. Zara and I have just finalized the most spectacular plans for our 25th wedding anniversary." I smiled then, a genuine smile, a hopeful one. I had been expecting this call, you see. For weeks they'd been dropping hints about a special trip, a grand gesture. Zara had mentioned the Maldives in hushed, reverent tones, all those breathtaking turquoise waters and impossibly luxurious overwater bungalows. My heart, against my better judgment, had fluttered with a quiet anticipation. I had even quietly set aside a significant sum in my mind, knowing full well that such a trip, for a couple with Kalen and Zara's discerning tastes, would be truly substantial. And for a quarter-century milestone? It had to be magnificent, a celebration worthy of their carefully curated image. I assumed, foolishly perhaps, that I would be funding it, as I always had. It was a silent, unwritten contract between us, one where my role was to provide, their role was to receive. But more than that, more than the financial contribution, I truly believed I would be invited. I imagined myself finally genuinely included in a momentous family celebration, not just as the bank, but as their mother, as the matriarch. We'd share stories, perhaps I'd even tell a few anecdotes from Kalen's childhood, stories that would make them laugh. We'd make new memories, real ones, together. I'd finally feel like I belonged again, truly and completely. It was a naive hope, I realize now, a desperate clinging to a dream that had long since withered. "Oh, Kalen, that sounds wonderful," I said, my voice full of genuine warmth, my heart still holding on to that fragile hope. "The Maldives, wasn't it? I've heard it's simply paradise. I'm so excited for you both." There was a moment of silence on the line, a hesitation that prickled at my skin, a tiny warning bell that I, in my eagerness, chose to ignore. Then Zara's voice, sharp and saccharine, cut in, her tone a delicate blend of false sweetness and thinly veiled condescension. She always had a way of cutting you down with a smile, delivering a blow wrapped in silk. Oh yes, Adelia. It's going to be absolutely divine. But, she purred, and that but felt like a dagger, sharp and precise, twisting in a wound that was already raw. It's strictly for our nuclear family, you see. Kaylin, myself, and the children, of course. A proper, intimate celebration. My hand tightened on the receiver, my knuckles turning white as my grip grew desperate. Nuclear family. That phrase hit me with a force I hadn't anticipated. A cold, clinical dismissal that left me breathless. After all I had done, all I had given, all the years of quiet sacrifice, I wasn't considered part of their nuclear family? The irony was a bitter taste in my mouth. But the real blow, the truly crushing one, came next, delivered with Zara's signature, condescending sweetness, a smile I could almost hear through the phone. And honestly, Adelia, she continued, as if she were doing me a favor, bestowing a kindness upon me, we just knew you wouldn't enjoy the modern amenities anyway. All those sleek, minimalist designs, the loud music at the resort bars, the general buzz of a place like that. You're much more comfortable with your quiet routines, aren't you? We wouldn't want you to feel out of place or, heavens forbid, bored. Bored? Out of place? The words echoed in my mind, each one a hammer blow to my fragile sense of self. It wasn't just the exclusion that stung, that familiar ache of being pushed aside. It was the blatant public dismissal, the implication that I was too old, too out of touch, too irrelevant. After decades of quietly, consistently, and often anonymously bankrolling their lavish lives, their elite education for the grandchildren, their every whim and fancy, their carefully constructed facade of success, I was being told I wasn't even fit to witness their celebration, let alone fund it or, God forbid, enjoy it. It was a humiliation, a public shaming, even if only Kaylin and Zara were on the other end of the line. It wasn't a casual oversight, a momentary lapse in judgment. It was a deliberate, calculated exclusion designed to make me feel exactly what I had feared for years. Redundant, a burden, a relic. I remember my breath catching in my throat, a suffocating knot forming in my chest. My vision blurred slightly, the vibrant colors of my beautiful roses, so alive just moments before, seemed to fade into a dull, indistinguishable blur. All those years, all that sacrifice, all that quiet devotion. For what? To be told I wouldn't enjoy modern amenities? To be sidelined as if I were some inconvenient, antique piece of furniture gathering dust in a forgotten corner? That conversation, that was the moment. That was the final straw. It didn't just sting. It shattered something deep inside me, something I didn't even realize I was still holding on to. The last vestiges of hope that I was truly loved, truly valued, for anything more than my bank account. And in that shattering, in the debris of my broken hopes, something new began to form. Something hard, something clear, something utterly resolved. So how did we get here, you ask? How did a mother, a grandmother, a woman who had poured her life into her family, reach a point where her own flesh and blood would dismiss her so utterly, so cruelly? It wasn't an overnight thing, not at all. It was a slow, insidious erosion like water wearing down a stone, drop by drop, year after year, until only a hollow shell remained. It began, I suppose, after my beloved husband Arthur passed away. He was an industrialist, you see, a brilliant man with a keen mind for business and an even keener eye for detail. He'd built a considerable fortune from the ground up, a testament to his intelligence and unwavering dedication. He always said his greatest legacy wasn't just the businesses he created, the factories he built, or the wealth he accumulated, but the security he left for our family, the foundation upon which Kaylin and his future would stand. And he trusted me implicitly to manage it, to ensure Kaylin and his future family would always be well taken care of, free from the financial struggles he had known in his youth. Arthur adored Kaylin, our only son. He wanted him to have every opportunity, every advantage, a life far easier than his own. I embraced that responsibility. After Arthur was gone, and the initial paralyzing grief began to subside, I found a new purpose in ensuring his wishes were carried out, in nurturing our son's life and the lives of my precious grandchildren Leo and Chloe. Kaylin at the time was trying to find his footing, dabbling in various entrepreneurial ventures that never quite took off. He was full of ideas but lacked the discipline or perhaps the drive to see them through. He and Zara had just married, full of grand dreams of a life of ease and luxury. They wanted a beautiful home, a certain lifestyle, one that Arthur's legacy could easily provide. And I, wanting to see them happy, wanting to ease their burdens, wanting to honor Arthur's memory and fulfill his dying wish. I started to help. It began subtly, you know? A generous gift for their wedding, a grand sum that Zara openly gushed over. Then, a down payment on their first house, a lovely little bungalow in a quaint neighborhood. They struggled with the mortgage. Zara always had such expensive tastes, a talent for finding the most exclusive boutiques and the priciest interior decorators. So, I quietly started sending them money each month, enough to cover the payments just to help them get established, to give them a firm start. They were so grateful then, sending me bouquets of fresh flowers, calling often, their voices filled with effusive thanks. "Oh, Mother, you're our angel," Zara would gush, her voice sweet and full of admiration. "We don't know what we'd do without you." And I believed them. I truly did. It warmed my heart to know I was making their lives easier, truly providing for them as Arthur had wished. As the years went on, that little bungalow wasn't enough. Zara decided they needed to be in a more exclusive neighborhood, closer to the right schools for Leo and Chloe, schools that promised a certain social cachet. So I funded the new, sprawling mansion they now live in. It was a grand, imposing house with manicured lawns and an endless number of rooms, far beyond Kalen's meager income, even with his various entrepreneurial endeavors, which seemed to consist mostly of expensive lunches and golf games. I paid the entire mortgage month after month, year after year. I wanted them to have the best, to fit in, to thrive. Didn't every mother want that for her children? I wanted my grandchildren to have stability, to grow up without financial worries, without the anxieties that had plagued my own youth. I thought I was giving them a strong foundation, a secure future. Then came the grandchildren's education. Leo and Chloe were bright, no doubt about it, quick-witted and charming when they chose to be. Zara was adamant they attend the most prestigious private schools, then the most elite universities. "Only the best for our darlings, Adelia," she'd insist, her tone implying that any less would be a personal affront to their potential, as if it was my decision, not theirs, to send them down this expensive path. And so I paid. Tens of thousands, then hundreds of thousands, year after year. Tuition, books, living expenses, extravagant study abroad programs in Europe, exclusive internships in glittering faraway cities. I covered it all without question. I sent them generous allowances for their personal expenses, ensuring they never felt left out among their wealthy peers, always able to keep up with the latest trends and social engagements. I remember Chloe calling me once from Paris, her voice bubbling with excitement, gushing about a designer handbag she just bought, saying, "Thanks, Grandma. You're the absolute best ATM a girl could ask for." TM. That was the moment I first felt it, that cold, hard reality setting in, a shiver running down my spine. The words hung in the air, a stark, uncomfortable truth. But I pushed it away, rationalizing it. She was young, I told myself. She didn't mean it. She was just being playful, caught up in the excitement of her new purchase. Right? I desperately wanted to believe that. Their lifestyle spiraled, always just a little beyond what Kalen could truly afford. A perpetual game of financial catch-up that I was always destined to play. Zara would decide they needed a new luxury car every 2 or 3 years. A sleek Mercedes, then a roaring Porsche, then a stately Range Rover, each one flashier than the last. Each time I'd receive a call from Kalen, always prefaced with a sigh and a lament about how challenging his business was, how tight things were, painting a picture of dire financial straits. And then the subtle request, almost an afterthought, "Mother, could you just help us with the lease payments for a bit? Just until things pick up." And I always did. I wanted them to maintain their image, their carefully constructed status in their elite social circles. It seemed important to Zara, and by extension to Kalen, whose own self-worth seemed tied to their material possessions. And then there were the vacations. Oh, the vacations. Lavish trips to the Caribbean, private ski chalets in Aspen, meticulously planned historical tours through Italy. All funded by me, of course, every single luxurious detail. Sometimes I was invited, but it felt more like an afterthought, a grudging obligation, a token gesture. I'd be relegated to the smallest room, or a separate villa a mile away, while they reveled in their 5-star suites, their laughter echoing from afar. Or worse, Zara would say with a practiced sigh, "Oh, Adelia, it's a very active trip, you know, lots of hiking and late nights. You wouldn't enjoy it." The implication was clear. I was too old, too frail, too boring to keep up. And then they'd send me glossy postcards of their adventures, knowing full well I had paid for every single one of them, a silent reminder of my exclusion. I kept them all in a shoebox, a collection of beautiful places I had paid for but never truly experienced with them. Over time, the gratitude vanished entirely. It wasn't just the absence of thank yous that hurt, though that sting was constant. It was the chilling shift in their demeanor. My contributions, once seen as generous gifts, became an expectation, an entitlement. My presence became an inconvenience, an obstacle to their perfect lives. When I visited, Zara would make disparaging remarks about my old-fashioned ways, my simple tastes, my practical clothing. "Adelia, why do you still wear those sensible shoes? You could afford much nicer, you know. But then you've always been a bit frugal, haven't you?" she'd say with a snide smile, her eyes sweeping over my modest dress as if it were an insult to her refined sensibilities. Kaylin would nod along, a silent accomplice, never defending me, never standing up for his own mother. He'd just quietly hand me a neatly itemized list of bills or a new investment opportunity he needed capital for, his eyes avoiding mine. They started actively excluding me. Family dinners became rare, always an excuse. "Oh, it's just a casual thing, Mother. You wouldn't want to bother coming all this way." Or, "We're having friends over, it's going to be a bit loud, not your scene." The grandchildren, once affectionate, grew distant, absorbed in their elite lives, too busy with their designer clothes and exclusive parties, too accustomed to merely receiving money and gifts from their silent, ever-present benefactor. Holidays, which used to be filled with laughter and warmth, became strained affairs where I felt like a stranger at my own family's table. I was the ghost at the feast, the silent ATM, wheeled out when needed, pushed back into the shadows when not. I remember one Christmas Zara had bought Kaylin a ridiculously expensive watch, and she pointedly asked me, "Adelia, did you forget to get Kaylin something this year? He's been so good." My gift, a carefully chosen antique book, lay unopened on the table, ignored. My heart ached. I started asking myself why? Why did I continue? Was it love? Yes, I suppose a desperate, clinging love for the family I had, for the memory of Arthur, for the hope that one day they would see me, truly see me, not just my wealth. Was it fear? Perhaps. Fear of being truly alone, of having no purpose, of having nothing left to give. Fear of validating their dismissive behavior. But mostly I think it was habit. It was easier to keep giving, to keep hoping, than to confront the painful truth of their ingratitude and my own diminishing worth in their eyes. Every time I thought about stopping, Zara would find a new emergency. A sudden unexpected medical bill for Chloe, a last-minute school trip for Leo, a once-in-a-lifetime business opportunity for Kaylin, and I'd cave. I always did. I would tell myself just this once more, just until they're truly on their feet. But they never were. Until that autumn afternoon. Until the Maldives. That was the moment the stone finally broke. What would you have done? How much more could you take? How many more times could you be dismissed, taken for granted, and used, before you realized that the very people you were trying to help were actively destroying your spirit, eroding your very sense of self? After Kaylin and Zara's call, I sat there in my garden, the receiver still clutched in my hand, long after they had hung up, long after the dial tone had given way to a quiet hum. The autumn sun, once warm and comforting, felt cold on my skin, mimicking the chill that had settled in my heart. I felt empty, completely, utterly empty, as if every ounce of love and hope I had poured into them had simply drained away, leaving a gaping void. But then, a strange feeling began to bloom in that emptiness. It wasn't anger, not exactly. It was more like a profound clarity, sharp and undeniable. A sense of peace even, as if a heavy shroud, woven from years of self-deception and misplaced hope, had finally been lifted, and I could finally see everything with perfect, unclouded vision. They didn't want me. They didn't need me. Not for anything real, anything genuine. They only needed my money. And in their desperate pursuit of that money, in their relentless exploitation, they had extinguished every flicker of genuine connection that might have existed between us. My internal conflict, the one that had tormented me for years, the endless cycle of giving, hoping, being disappointed, then giving again, always believing that one day they would see me, truly appreciate me. It just evaporated. There was nothing left to fight for, nothing left to give. And in that void, a powerful resolve took root, firm and unyielding. A single decisive thought, clear as a bell. No more. Not one more penny. I walked inside, my steps feeling lighter than they had in years, as if the weight of decades of emotional burden had suddenly been lifted from my shoulders. I went straight to my study, a room filled with Arthur's old books, their leather bindings cracked with age, and the comforting scent of aged paper and faint pipe tobacco. It was a sanctuary, a place where Arthur and I had often discussed the future, made plans. I pulled out my financial advisor's card. Mr. Arthur Davies. He had been Arthur's confidant, and then mine for over 40 years. He knew the intricacies of our family's trusts, the various accounts, the sprawling investments. He knew everything, every financial detail of my life. I picked up the phone, my hand steady, my fingers firm on the cold plastic. Mr. Davies, I said, and even I was surprised by the calm authority in my voice, a strength I hadn't known I possessed. It's Adelia Thorne. I need to make some significant changes, and I need to do it today. He sounded a little surprised, perhaps even a bit taken aback by the urgency and finality in my tone, but always professional. Of course, Mrs. Thorne. How can I assist? I want to freeze all discretionary trusts that directly or indirectly benefit Kaylin, Zara, Leo, or Chloe. I stated, each word precise and deliberate, like carefully placed bricks forming a new wall. And I want to redirect my substantial assets. Every single financial lifeline I have provided to them, I want it cut. Immediately. There was a stunned silence on his end, a pause that stretched, heavy with unspoken questions. I could almost hear him processing the enormity of what I was saying, the sheer scale of the financial unraveling I was initiating. Mrs. Thorne, are you quite certain? This is a very significant decision, one with profound implications. Mr. Davies, I replied, my voice unwavering, firm as bedrock. I have never been more certain of anything in my life. Let's start with the mortgage payments for their mansion. Stop them. Effective immediately. Next, the tuition for Leo and Chloe's universities. Cancel the transfers. Their luxury car leases? Terminate them, or let them expire without renewal. And their monthly allowances, end them. All of it. Every last cent. I heard him rustling papers on his end, the faint scratch of a pen making notes, his professional demeanor holding firm despite the shock. Understood, Mrs. Thorne. This will, of course, have far-reaching implications. They are accustomed to a rather substantial lifestyle. This will be quite a shock. I am aware, Mr. Davies, I said, a slight, almost imperceptible tremor in my voice, but not from fear, from a deep, profound sense of righteousness, of finally doing what was right for myself. And I want a complete accounting of all my remaining assets, to be reallocated. I want to set up new trusts for charitable organizations close to my heart, the local animal shelter, the Children's Literacy Program, the Historical Preservation Society. I want to invest in my own future, perhaps a small travel fund for myself, a new hobby that brings me joy. For once, Mr. Davies, I want my money to serve me, and causes that truly matter, not simply to fund a lavish lifestyle built on disrespect and entitlement. He listened patiently, offering professional advice on the logistics, but I could tell he understood. He had seen it, I'm sure, in the quiet reports he sent me each month, how much was going out, how little was coming back in terms of genuine connection or appreciation. He simply said, his voice respectful, "As you wish, Mrs. Thorne. I will begin the process immediately. It may take a few days for all the necessary paperwork and legalities to be completed, but the instructions will be sent out by the end of business today." And just like that, it was done. A few phone calls, a few electronic signatures, the work of decades, the quiet sacrifices, the endless giving, all brought to a screeching halt with a few firm instructions. As I hung up the phone, a wave of emotions washed over me. Immense relief, a touch of sadness for what might have been, for the family I had always dreamed of, but overwhelmingly, a sense of immense liberating freedom. I had finally taken back control of my life, my dignity, my own story. The fear that had held me captive for so long, the fear of loneliness, of their disapproval, of Arthur's unspoken disappointment, it simply dissolved, like mist in the morning sun. I stood taller. I breathed deeper, a full cleansing breath that filled my lungs with a fresh, invigorating air. And for the first time in a very long time I felt truly, completely, undeniably myself. I wondered fleetingly how long it would take them to notice. I didn't have to wonder for long. Of course my decision was going to have consequences, wasn't it? When you pull the rug out from under someone who has grown accustomed to walking on air, who has never had to touch the ground, they're bound to fall. And they did. Oh, they fell hard. It started subtly. First it was a text from Zara, confused and a little condescending. "Adelia, darling, our mortgage payment hasn't gone through this month. Is there a glitch with the bank? You know how unreliable they can be." I didn't reply. I simply watched my phone, a quiet observer of the unfolding drama. Then a more frantic call from Kalen, his voice laced with panic. "Mother, the university is saying Leo's tuition hasn't cleared. There must be some mistake. They're threatening to remove him from the dorms." Still I remained silent. I turned off my phone, went about my quiet routines, tending to my garden, reading my books, savoring the tranquility. I knew it was coming, the calm before the storm. And then, just 3 days after my conversation with Mr. Davies, the storm broke. I was enjoying my morning tea, a delicate blend of Earl Grey, sitting in my sunroom, bathed in the soft autumnal light, reading a beautifully bound first edition of Jane Austen. The peace was absolute, until I heard the screech of tires on my driveway, a sound of aggressive urgency that shattered the morning's serenity. A moment later, a furious pounding on my front door. It wasn't a polite knock, it was an enraged assault, each thud vibrating through the very foundations of my home. I walked to the door, my heart surprisingly steady, a quiet, almost serene determination settling over me. When I opened it, there they were. Kalen and Zara, their faces contorted with a mixture of panic, disbelief, and incandescent rage. Zara's perfectly coiffed hair was slightly askew, a stray strand falling across her forehead, and her designer handbag, usually cradled with such reverence, was clutched like a weapon, her knuckles white. Kalen looked utterly disheveled, his expensive suit rumpled, his usual smooth veneer completely shattered, revealing the raw panic beneath. They looked desperate, lost without their invisible safety net. "Mother, what in God's name is going on?" Kalen practically roared, his voice cracking, pushing past me into the foyer without waiting for an invitation, his eyes blazing with accusation. "The bank just called. They've frozen all our accounts. They said the trusts are gone. What have you done to us?" Zara followed, her voice a high-pitched shriek, bordering on hysteria. "Adelia, this is utterly preposterous. My car lease has been terminated. They're demanding payment. Do you know how humiliating this is? Our friends are calling, asking what happened. Leo and Chloe are distraught. Their universities are threatening to expel them." I simply closed the door behind them, calmly, deliberately, the click of the lock echoing loudly in the sudden silence. I looked at their frantic faces, their wide, accusing eyes, their bodies vibrating with agitation. For years I had held my tongue, absorbed their slights, endured their dismissals. I had swallowed my pride, my hurt, my dignity. But not anymore. This was my moment. "Please sit down," I said, my voice quiet but firm, devoid of any emotion, a calm center in their storm. They didn't. They just stood there, buzzing with agitation like trapped insects. "Sit down, Mother," Kalen bellowed, taking another step closer, his face inches from mine. "Are you insane? You've bankrupted us. You've destroyed everything. How could you do this to us? Your own family. Your own flesh and blood. Your family." I repeated, my gaze piercing, unblinking. "Is that what you call me, Kalen? Your family?" Because for years I've felt like little more than a bank account with a pulse. A resource to be drained, then dismissed, then ignored until the next need arose. Zara scoffed, regaining a sliver of her usual smugness, attempting to assert control over the conversation. "Oh, please, Adelia. Don't be so melodramatic. We've always been appreciative. We simply had an understanding. You have the means, we have the needs. It's what you wanted, isn't it? To provide for your family? To see us comfortable." "What I wanted," I stated, my voice rising slightly but still controlled, each word a carefully aimed dart, "was to be loved. To be included. To be respected. Not to be told I wouldn't enjoy modern amenities on a trip I was fully expected to fund. A trip to celebrate your anniversary, Zara. which you explicitly said was strictly for your nuclear family. Did you think I was deaf? Or senile? Did you think I wouldn't hear the contempt in your voice?" The color drained from Zara's face, her carefully constructed composure crumbling. Kalen looked stunned, his mouth slightly agape. They hadn't expected me to bring that up. They thought I was a quiet, forgetful old woman, easily manipulated. "That was just a casual comment, Adelia," Zara stammered, trying to backtrack, waving a dismissive hand. "You're blowing things out of proportion. You always do." "Am I?" I asked, raising an eyebrow, a flicker of cold amusement in my eyes. "Was it also a casual comment when you mocked my sensible shoes? When you called me frugal for not spending money on frivolous things, even as I funded your every extravagance, every designer outfit, every unnecessary luxury? Was it casual when you pushed me aside at family gatherings, or made excuses so I wouldn't bother coming all this way? Or when Chloe called me an ATM, while enjoying her Parisian shopping spree, paid for by me?" I watched their faces closely, seeing the recognition of their past cruelties dawning in their eyes. Kalen stepped forward again, his voice dropping to a low, manipulative tone, attempting to guilt-trip me. "Mother, think about Leo and Chloe. Their future. Their education. You can't just cut them off. They'll have to take out loans, go to a public university. Do you want them to be common? After all the advantages you've given them? All the sacrifices you made?" "Ah, yes, the advantages," I replied, my voice dripping with irony, a bitter taste in my mouth. "The advantages I provided while you taught them to be entitled, to expect everything, and to give nothing in return. Is a public university truly common, Kalen? Or is it where most hardworking, self-sufficient young people learn to stand on their own 2 feet? Something it seems you and Zara have conveniently avoided for decades. Perhaps it's time they learned the true value of an education, rather than simply having it handed to them on a silver platter." Zara burst into tears then, real or feigned I couldn't tell. Her face crumpled, her voice high-pitched and desperate. "You're ruining our lives, Adelia. You're a cruel, bitter old woman. How can you do this to your own son? To your grandchildren? What will people say?" "I am not ruining your lives, Zara," I said, looking her directly in the eye, my voice as steady as a rock, unwavering. "I am simply no longer enabling you to ruin your own. For years I have bankrolled your lavish lifestyle, your mansion, your cars, your designer clothes, your endless vacations, your children's elite education. I did it out of love, out of a misguided hope that you would one day appreciate it, and me. But that love was abused. My generosity was taken for granted. And my presence was discarded, my feelings ignored. You wanted a nuclear family trip, Zara? Well, now you have one. And you can fund it yourselves. I believe you'll find it quite intimate." They stood there speechless, their faces a mixture of shock, fury, and dawning horror. They had never heard me speak like this. They had never seen me angry or resolute or truly defiant. They had always assumed I would simply acquiesce, that I was too weak, too old, too afraid to truly stand up for myself. They were wrong. Completely, utterly wrong. The confrontation ended not with a bang, but with a stunned silence, followed by their defeated, furious retreat. They had nothing left to say because for the first time I had said everything. So what happened next? Well, as you can imagine, their lives changed dramatically. Not overnight, but certainly rapidly. The initial panic turned into a desperate scramble. Kalen, who had never truly held a stable job, whose business ventures had always been funded by me, had to find one. It was a humiliating experience for him, going from industrialist's heir to a mid-level manager in a company he once scoffed at as being beneath him. He struggled, I heard, with the long hours and the lack of deference from his colleagues. Zara, unable to maintain her socialite lifestyle, her expensive lunches and charity galas, had to sell off her expensive wardrobe, her designer bags, and eventually, their beloved mansion, a symbol of their false prosperity. They moved into a much smaller, far more modest home in a less prestigious neighborhood, a stark contrast to the grand life they had known. The luxury cars were repossessed one by one. Leo and Chloe, well, they faced the harsh reality of student loans and scholarships. They had to transfer from their elite private universities to more affordable public colleges. I heard through a distant cousin that it was a huge shock for them, a real wake-up call to a world they had never known existed outside of their bubble. They had to get part-time jobs. Leo working at a local coffee shop, Chloe tutoring high school students, something they had never conceived of doing. It was difficult, I'm sure, adapting to a life where things weren't simply handed to them. But it was also perhaps the best thing that could have happened to them. For the first time, they had to work for what they wanted, to understand the value of a dollar earned through honest effort, to interact with people from different backgrounds. And my life? It transformed in ways I never imagined possible. The weight, the constant anxiety of their demands, their manipulations, their subtle cruelty simply lifted. It was as if I had been carrying a boulder on my back for decades, a crushing burden that stole my joy and my breath, and suddenly it was gone. The silence in my home, once a lonely echo of what I had lost, of the family gatherings that never were, became a peaceful, comforting quiet, filled only with the sounds of my own choosing. I started doing things I'd put off for years, passions I had sacrificed for the sake of their needs. I took up painting again, a joy from my youth that Arthur had always encouraged but that had fallen by the wayside amidst family obligations. My canvases now burst with vibrant colors, reflecting the new lightness in my spirit. I joined a local garden club and discovered a wonderful community of like-minded women who share my love for roses and lively conversation, women who truly listened and shared their own stories. I started volunteering at the local library, helping children with their reading. It brings me so much joy, more than any expensive gift ever did. Seeing their eyes light up with understanding. I even booked a small trip for myself. Not to the Maldives, mind you, but to the Scottish Highlands, a place Arthur and I had always dreamed of visiting but never got around to. The beauty, the ruggedness, the sheer freedom of being there, completely on my own terms, was exhilarating. I hiked through ancient forests, breathed in the crisp, clean air, and marveled at the sweeping landscapes. I met wonderful people, ate delicious food, and felt truly alive. And for the first time in a very long time, I felt truly, profoundly happy. My life wasn't about serving others' endless desires anymore. It was about truly living my own. I learned the hardest lesson of all. Sometimes the kindest thing you can do for someone, even your own children, is to let them fall. To let them experience the consequences of their own actions. To give them the space and the necessity to learn to stand on their own 2 feet, to discover their own resilience. And I realized the greatest gift you can give someone isn't money, but the opportunity to find their own strength, to discover their own worth, independent of your endless handouts. My reckoning wasn't just about them, it was about me. It was about reclaiming my dignity, my peace, my own life. And that, my dear friends, is priceless. That was my story. Our channel is full of life lessons like this one, stories of ordinary people who faced extraordinary challenges and found their own paths to resilience and peace. If you want to hear more real-life accounts of betrayal, courage, and unexpected turns, make sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you don't miss any of our upcoming videos. We release new stories every week, and each one is a testament to the human spirit. What do you think? Did I do the right thing? Was I too harsh, or did I simply do what was necessary? Share your thoughts with me in the comments below. I'll be reading all of them. Your insights mean the world to me. Thank you for listening.